So hey guys, every year we try to sit down, reevaluate our garden. I've been kind of doing a little bit of thinking about how things are going this year. And I thought I would take you guys along, show you some of the things that we feel like are going pretty well for us and some of the things maybe not so much. So I'm sure many of you are aware that we're working towards the Back to Eden method. We got a handful of chips earlier this spring, but been having a hard time tracking down the wood chips that we need. We've put in, our information on a lot of the chip drop sites. I'll put a lot of those chip drop sites in the description below. It sounds like they've been working pretty good for other people, but in our area, there's just not a lot of work happening. So we do have something lined up here, but in the meantime, this spring, we didn't want to bank on getting chips, which was a smart thing because so far it hasn't happened. And we spaced a lot of our rows about 4 feet apart. That gives us enough space for that plant to grow, and then also be able to run a tiller through there to help us keep on top of some of the weeds. I just love sweet corn. Here in Minnesota, or generally in the Midwest, you're shooting for knee-high by 4th of July to have a pretty successful harvest come the fall time, and we're right on schedule for that. Things are going pretty good. The one thing that, like I mentioned, we've been putting our rows at 4 feet, and you can see there's still quite a bit of space here. And a lot of times what happens is the corn comes up and it canopies, it helps knock down a lot of the weeds, but we did ours at 4 feet or 48 inches. The standard generally for large scale farming is generally 30 to 36 inches, and I'm a little worried, you can start to see this stuff starting to get into the canopy phase here, but it's not exactly going to be covering this row, so I may have to potentially be running a tiller up and down this row all summer. So I think next year what we'll do is we'll actually bring our rows in and probably plant them at about 36 inches. So like I mentioned with the corn, we're shooting for somewhere around knee high. We have these variety of Russian giant sunflowers that we do every year. One of our favorite. The one thing I'm really grateful or glad we decided to put these on the northern side of our garden is, as you can see, it's taller than our corn here. And they have been quite a bit. These things just seem to really grow and seem to be really hardy. And if we would have put it more on the southern side, they'd be casting a shadow over on a lot of our crops. I mean, even just look at our corn here, you can see it's quite a bit smaller than the sunflowers. I've had a handful of people ask us how we selected the crops that we did to go into what has already been converted into the Back to Eden garden method. And to be honest, we thought we'd be a lot further along than this, than where we currently are. So when we started putting stuff in, we put stuff in pretty early, before the last frost. So we ended up putting crops in like potatoes and onions. However, we did make sure we made a point to get these tomatoes in there. A lot of times you want some sort of cover under your tomatoes, straw, wood chips, something to prevent for when it rains and that mud splashing back up onto the leaves of your tomato plants. It can spread diseases and cause a little bit of chaos and stuff. So we got all these in there. Our last row down here is right on the edge of it, but things have been hanging in there. But so far it's been working pretty well. So now for something that hasn't been working quite as well for us as I had hoped, and that was ditching the tomato cages and going for these T-posts and running wire to help support our tomatoes. Actually this has been working pretty well as long as the plant gets big enough, but when they're sitting in these smaller stages right now, it gets a little tough because it's not really supporting the plant very much. And I think next year, instead of having a 12-inch spacing between the two sides, I'll probably cut that down somewhere to 8 to 10 inches. Maybe even potentially put a little bit of angle on these posts. So one thing I'm kicking myself about, I'm still trying to figure out what I was thinking during that period of time, and that was placing all our pumpkins and watermelon back here. It's like the furthest part away from the hose or the sprinkler or whatever you want to call it. We are able to get a sprinkler back here and make it work this year. But next year there's going to be some more changes. Every year we're trying to grow, push ourselves a little bit more. This wood pile here, the plan is to burn this winter here, and it's not going to get restacked back there. That's part of the reason I haven't been cutting firewood right now, waiting to get some of this stuff moved in before I start worrying about replenishing the piles, because we're going to be extending the garden out this way. And right now we're already running about 200 feet of hose, so I'm sure it's working our well pretty hard to push all that water out here. So next year, I don't think that's going to be an option. We're getting at a distance that I don't know if I want to really push our well to put water out there. So we're gonna have to put a little bit better solution and do a little better planning on some of our actual physical locations of some of the very heavy water crop plants. So one concern I have, but only time will really tell here. This year we have over 500 stalks of corn. I wish we would have staggered our planting on this a little bit. You know, maybe do 1/3 of one weekend, wait the following weekend, do another third, and then wait another weekend and do the following third. Just because I have a feeling all this stuff's gonna come ready at the same time. It's gonna be a busy weekend going out and harvesting, and then getting all that stuff processed, whether we can it. You know, obviously we're gonna eat some of it on the cob, and maybe blanch and freeze some of it as well. So I wish we would have staggered that a little bit. You know, next year I think we'll stay with another 72-day variety. That's what we did this year versus like an 83 or 84-day type variety. So next year I think we'll work on staggering a little bit, but I guess time will tell here. I'm just a little worried about this fall. So one thing I showed you guys a couple weeks ago was our wider row of dill. This has actually worked out a lot better than I thought. We haven't got many weeds in here, but the few weeds that we have had in here, it's been a little bit of a pain in the butt to get some of the stuff weeded without putting big holes in the area. For example, you say you get like a dandelion or something that gets in there and that leaf sprawls out, it puts a big bald spot in there. But we stayed on top of the weeds pretty well, and now we have a nice thick wall here with just a few little weeds here and there, mostly on the outside edges. So I've been quite happy with doing a little bit of a wider row of dill this year. So I thought I'd show you guys one last thing. Well, check out those sunflowers back there in the back corner. Those are the volunteers. We used to always do those every year down at this far end of this garden, but then this year we ended up moving them over, and they're not in the way of anything, so we've been just keeping them there. I did want to point out one last thing. This is the very far end of the garden that we have the Back to Eden method started on. Way on the other side, it's 1/3 of the garden has got chips, and then the rest of the garden doesn't. And the Back to Eden method, of course, is a no-till method. You don't want to till those chips in. And we sort of shot ourselves in the foot a little bit. We put a bunch of strawberry plants in here. Some of them you probably can't see because they're pretty small, little staggered little leaves and everything in here. We almost ended up putting asparagus in here, but ended up putting that somewhere else. But anyways, because you know, Back to Eden's a no-till method, I wish we would have taken the time and made sure we found a spot down there for that stuff, because we've kind of shot ourselves in the foot a little bit. In order for us to get a tractor in here and till this garden, let's say we don't get all the chips in, we have to get in until next spring. It's going to be a little bit more difficult because you can't just easily back in here now and run the tractor with the tiller on it, and I prefer not to drive over the other side, you know, with all the chips. So I'll probably just have to use my little walk behind tiller and till the things up. But supposedly we have some stuff lined up with the power company that, you know, later this summer to get chips, and if we do get chips this summer, it's definitely going to be going into this garden to try to hurry up and finish this one off, and then we'll start working on the other ones. Things have been going pretty well. A few of the minor things that we're going to keep in mind here for next year. I'm sure there's going to be plenty more things that actually end up coming a little bit more to the forefront as we get closer to harvesting time. And right now we're just right at the beginning phases here. We're getting a little bit of lettuce, a little bit of cherry tomatoes. We're getting a few things out of the garden, but nothing really too spectacular. So as time goes on, I'm sure more of these things will crop up, and I'll keep you guys updated on it. So anyways, hope you guys enjoyed the video, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching.